Roaming. Roaming is the term used to describe any time a defender plays a significant distance away from the objective. There are three particular styles of play that come to mind when I think of the word roaming. The first is to go to a far end of the map where it's likely the attackers are going to enter the building. Find somewhere to hide and wait for them to push in. If they're careless and they haven't been droning, they're not going to see you. So at first opportunity, you get a kill or maybe two and run away to safety, either back to the objective or just somewhere far away from the attackers. The second style is far more defensive. This kind of style is usually for objectives that have been around in the game for quite a long time. You understand how the attackers are probably going to come at the site, and there's a corridor or there's a room or there's a hatch that is very important for you to protect to prevent the attackers from following through with this particular strategy. This kind is a little bit less about getting actual kills, and is 100% about preventing and slowing down the attacker push on the hatch or room that you're trying to protect. The third style is super aggressive. This is for the frag-hungry Pulse and Valkyrie mains who are going to jump out of every window and run out of every doorway to pick up as many kills as possible and make sure the attackers do not feel comfortable or safe. These people don't stop moving unless they need to check a camera, and you'll often see them running backwards and forwards across the map, desperately trying to get kills. And I'm not criticizing at all. If people are good at this, it works. And it is amazing to have these kinds of people on your team. So we know what roaming is, but what purpose does roaming serve over simply just sitting in the objective and bunkering down? Well, it serves two purposes. One is that you're out there actively looking for kills and taking the fight to the attackers instead of waiting for them to coordinate a push. Two, you are wasting the attackers' time. If the attackers are scared of you running out of a doorway, or if they need control of a particular room but you're in there, they have to coordinate, they have to drone, and they have to work together to be able to get rid of you and continue with their push. So what's more important, getting those kills or slowing down the attacker push? That depends entirely on the level of play that you're at and your attitude towards the game. If you're in casual and you don't really care, the likelihood is that you're doing this to get those kills, and that's fine. If you're playing more competitively and you're quite a high rank, the truth is it's going to be harder for you to get those kills. Now if you do get those kills, that's obviously a super good thing for your team. But just because someone is roaming and not picking up kills, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad roamer. If they're keeping the attacking team out of the room that they want to take control of, or they're contesting an entry point that the attackers really want to come through, every second counts. More often than not, it seems that winning a round comes down to killing all 5 members of the other team rather than completing the objective. But Siege is still an objective-based game. And as a defender, all you have to actually do is prevent the objective. You don't have to get all the kills. So if the attacking push is slowed hard enough, and they're either forced to rush the objective, or they don't even make it to the objective at all, then as a roamer, you have done your job, and you have contributed massively to your team winning that round. So how do we get better at roaming? There's a few things that we can take a good look at. The first thing to consider is where do you want to be? And this all comes down to the 3 styles of roaming that we just discussed. Do you want to catch out some attackers and get some kills early on in the round? Then you got to figure out where people are going to be coming from. I'm not going to lie, this can be hit and miss because the attackers might not even come the way that you're predicting, and by the time you get back round to them, they've already entered the building. If you want to be the person to contest the attackers and halt the push, you got to figure out which rooms they're going to want to take control of before making the final push on the objective. Is there a hatch above you that they want to take control of? How are you going to stop them getting to that hatch? It's all about getting into the mindset of the attackers and learning the most common pushes and tactics that attacking teams tend to use at your level of play. So how do we get kills whilst we're roaming? The first and most obvious answer is spawn peeks and runouts. If you're going for frags, these are 2 things that are going to be super useful for you getting early kills. I'm not going to go into too much detail about spawn peeking and runouts because there are plenty of videos existing already, and I am planning on covering them in upcoming videos myself. But aside from that, you need to be paying close attention to cameras around you, sound cues, comms from teammates, and rather than getting into gunfights head on, if you can ambush attackers, that's the way you want to do it. It's much easier to get a kill if the person has their back to you or if they're on a drone, something along those lines. So most of the time, the quieter and faster that you are, the better. This is why most roamers are 3 speeds. This is why Caveira and Vigil, who are literally designed to be roamers, are both 3 speeds, because they make the least noise and they can get around the building the fastest. How do you slow the attackers down? There are quite a few things you can do. Some of these things are kind of direct action against the attacking team, and others are a lot more subtle. So for instance, if you go around and you punch a hole in every door and window during the prep phase, even if you don't plan on spawn peeking, most attackers are going to look at that and they are going to approach the building much more slowly. They don't want to die in the opening minute of the game, so they're going to be a lot more cautious. And if you do decide to stick your head through one of those holes and try some spawn peeks, they have a lot more windows to try and keep an eye on. Barricades are really weird because it's like this core mechanic that was advertised in the launch trailer of the game. You always see them in trailers for the game, and there's even a video tutorial in the main menu that you can watch on barricading doorways. And yet it seems to be this thing that is super easy to forget about a lot of the time. Barricades are particularly good for style 2. Like we were saying, if you're going to be trying to keep a room or a couple of rooms free of the attackers, give yourself some leeway to move around and get out of there if you need to, but absolutely make use of barricades to block lines of sight and also to alert you when attackers are actually coming towards you. So now let's talk about gadgets. Who is really good for roaming with? Like we've already said, pretty much all 3 speeds are great. If you're trying to hide near an entrance and get some early game kills, basically any 3 speed, but especially Caveira and Vigil. Both of their gadgets are going to be super useful for deceiving the attackers and making them feel safe before you get in and kill them. If we're looking at style 2 where you're trying to defend a particular area of the map, Alibi, Ela, Lesion, and Kapkan would be my recommended go-tos. Ela, Lesion, and Kapkan can all put out traps that have a strong chance of getting an attacker. All 3 traps have audio cues so that you know a trap's been activated, and if you're keeping good track, you should be able to figure out the direction of the trap that's just gone off. So for me, those guys are no-brainers. Alibi is slightly more specialized. I like to use her prismas to sort of put out feelers that help me detect enemies before they reach the room I'm trying to protect. And even better, if the attacker shoots the prisma itself, I know where they are for the next couple of seconds. For the third style, the hyper-aggressive one where you don't stop moving, the obvious choices are Pulse, Valkyrie, Mozzie, Caveira, and Vigil. Pulse, Valkyrie, and Mozzie all bring their own intel, so if you think someone's rappelling on a wall outside, you can check that before you make the jump out and get that kill. If you think someone's on the floor above you, all 3 of them have access to nitro cells, and providing Valkyrie and Mozzie have cameras in place, you can easily double check before you blow those attackers up. Caveira and Vigil obviously don't have the same utility in terms of gathering their own intelligence for this kind of playstyle, but like we've already said, their gadgets make it much easier for them to sneak up on attackers and ambush them. So we come to the big question for the attackers: how do you counter roamers effectively? Well, whilst it's entirely possible to go off on your own and hunt down a roamer, it's not always the best thing to do, even with operators like Jackal who are literally designed to hunt down roamers. Going off on your own to find one-on-one isn't a good call. To avoid the people lurking early game trying to get a couple of quick picks at the start of the round, you just have to drone for each other. You have to be meticulous, check all the corners, check all the little hiding spaces, and make sure it's safe for your teammates to move in before they do so. When we're looking at the roamers who are trying to hold a section of map, if your team decides that you still want to take those rooms, you need to again use your drones to establish where the roamer is, and you need to coordinate a push, preferably from different directions. If you're in a position where you are forced to push them from the same direction, then you need to push them together. It's highly likely that as you move through a doorway, the roamer is just going to get a kill on you, but if a teammate is there to trade out the kill straight away, then you could be in a much worse situation. You've brought it back down to a 4-4 straight away, and you've got control of the room that you were trying to get control of in the first place. Trading kills is really important in situations like this, so make sure that you're not putting your Thermite, your Habana, your Thatcher, or whoever else you need for this specific situation in harm's way. Have them on a drone helping coordinate the push, and then work together to get that roamer out of there. And finally, for roamers who are just moving all over the place, this is where operators like Gridlock and Nomad shine. You're going to be able to catch them out super easily if they come the wrong way and land in your spikes or in your air jab. The final thing to consider in all of this, if you drone the site you're attacking, and you realize that there's very few people actually there, you want to take advantage of that as soon as possible, communicate to your team, everyone is roaming, and just get the hell into that objective and just hold angles until those roamers are forced to come back. So there we have it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.